We will begin the regular press conference by Minister Iwaya. The floor is yours. Good evening, and I apologize for having kept you waiting, and thank you for staying until late in the evening. First of all, regarding our position of the Israel-Palestine issue at the UNGA in September. In order to participate in the United Nations General Assembly, I will visit New York from the 22nd to the 27th next week. As the international situation becomes ever more severe, we need to recover trust towards multilateralism, strengthen our partnership with like-minded countries, and re-establish responsible global governance, and these are urgent challenges, especially with regards to the Israel-Palestine issue. In order to demonstrate Japan's commitment towards the two-state solution, I will participate in the high-level international conference on realization of the two-state resolution, which will be held on the 22nd of September. In the international community, the momentum to recognize Palestine statehood is rising. In response to such circumstances, the government has been in deep discussions on how Japan ought to respond. What is going to be contributing to the substantive progress towards the two-state solution, which our government has constantly supported? We have repeatedly engaged in deep deliberations on this matter, and as a result, the government of Japan made a judgment not to recognize the state of Palestine at the time of the upcoming United Nations General Assembly. On the other hand, for Japan, the issue of recognition of Palestinian statehood is not a whether or not issue, because we are consistently supporting the two-state solution. It's an issue of when we recognize statehood. Under such recognition, we will continue to monitor very closely the changes in the situation and comprehensively study the matter with extremely high level of interest. The Palestinian situation we are faced today in the international community may truly destruct the premise of the two-state solution. The international community is sought to deal with the realistic challenges of necessity to drastically improve the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, immediate suspension of unilateral actions by Israel, including the move towards annexation of the West Bank, and support to strengthen the effective governing body of the Palestinian Authority. What's most important is the sustainable existence of Palestine and coexistence of Palestine with Israel. Japan will continue to play realistic and active role in order for us to become as close to the goal of two-state resolution. And in order for that goal to be achieved, the Palestine side has to make efforts to establish a robust governance body. And it was confirmed at the UNGA resolution on the 12th of September. Hamas must immediately release hostages, end its control of Gaza, and hand over its arms to the PA. The realization of the two-state solution and the improvement of the humanitarian situation is the goal, and Japan wishes to conduct in a substantive manner diplomatic efforts and responses that would positively contribute to the goal. And from such perspective, we will be engaged specifically in human resources development and capacity building of future leaders, including Gaza and the West Bank, including training of public servants, initiatives to further support Palestine and engage in concrete initiatives to support the nation building of Palestine. On the other hand, the current behavior of Israel is pushing Palestine into unprecedented difficulties. Expansion of military operations, including ground operations in the Gaza City, restriction over humanitarian assistance, and move towards annexation of the West Bank are unilateral activities we can never tolerate. Japan is strongly seeking Israel to take measures to end the humanitarian crisis and immediately suspend unilateral action. United States has a major influence over the current situation, and Japan will continue to seek the United States to further strengthen its approach towards Israel to halt its unilateral behavior. If Israel takes further activities to close the door towards the realization of a two-state solution, Japan will end up taking new steps. Based upon the policy of the government of Japan, as I have described, today I conveyed our position through telephone to Foreign Minister Agabekian of Palestine. I also talked over the phone with Foreign Minister Sa'al of Israel. And I also had a telephone conference with Secretary Rubio, Secretary of State of the United States, and once again repeated our urge for the United States to strongly seek Israel to immediately halt its unilateral behavior. The realization of the two-state solution and peace and stability of the Middle East region are our goals. Japan will continue our diplomatic efforts in the most appropriate and effective manner by also taking into consideration our national interest in the international community. That is all from me at the outset. Thank you. Then, those of you with questions, please raise your hand. When appointed, proceed to the microphone, identify yourself and your affiliation, and then proceed to your question. Baba-san, Nikkei newspaper. Baba, Nikkei newspaper. You mentioned the demonstration of the position of Japan and participation in the meeting. As the backdrop, what about the relationship between the two-state solution and the relationship with the policy? And what kind of factors were behind the judgment that was rendered by the Japanese government? In my initial remarks, I believe that I have explained sufficiently our position. What have the Japanese government been consistently supporting? It's the two-state solution. And is it going to be realistically leading to the achievement of the goal of two-state solution? And I think we are in a phase we have to consider that matter seriously. And upon comprehensively making a judgment on that matter, we have reached the decision that I have described in my initial remarks. In the international community or in Japan domestically, there are voices that seek the recognition of statehood, and I do realize that those voices are becoming louder. However, all the more so because of that situation, what is truly going to lead to the two-state solution? And again, we need to pursue that answer, and it is a responsibility upon the government to engage in diplomatic efforts towards that end. So from a variety of perspectives, we will study the matter, and like I did today, we will continue to approach Israel. We will continue to approach Palestine. We will continue to approach the United States. And by taking these steps steadily, first and foremost, we need to achieve ceasefire. And then, regarding the hostages, at the earliest possible timing, we need to realize the release of the hostages and open the pathway towards peace. And I think that's what's truly being sought. So what would be the steps that would lead to those ends? We have to seriously consider that matter, and I seek your understanding. Thank you.
Tadokoro-san from Mainichi Newspaper, please. This is Tadokoro from Mainichi Newspaper. Thank you for taking my question. At the very end, you mentioned if Israel is going to further close its door for peace, there are some specific actions that Japan is willing to take. Here, are you talking about approving Palestine as a state? And also, if Japan is going to, in the end, approve statehood of Palestine, what is going to be the premise, the conditions for that? And also, if I may, on the 22nd meeting, if Japan has an opportunity to speak, are you going to express, including what you mentioned at the outset, in other words, withholding the approval of Palestine as a statehood? Yes. So when I mentioned about new actions, further actions, at this moment, I would like to refrain from commenting what that specifically refers to. But it includes various options. All options are on the table, including approving Palestine as a state, its statehood. And what was your second question again? So the premise, the condition of the approval, that includes whether or not Palestine itself would be able to prepare to show that it is able to stand as a state. And we have always been helping a PA approval. We have continued our support for that, including training its personnel. Once we have all these actions be coordinated, that is important. And I do not want to make any guesses in this moment, but then it's really about how Gaza is going to develop from here, how Hamas is going to develop from here. All these potentials, all these items need to be thought comprehensively. And also, if I am to attend the meeting on the 22nd, we will be expressing our thoughts, our actions that we have in mind today.
Kiyomiya-san, Asahi Newspaper. Asahi Newspaper, my name is Kiyomiya. I have two questions. First of all, regarding Israel, you said that you have further action in the horizon vis-a-vis Israel. So if Israel takes hardline action, you will take measures such as the European countries are taking, like sanctions on ministers. And the United States, second point, Hamas will benefit if countries recognize Palestinian statehood, said Secretary Rubio. Do you agree to such position upheld by the United States government? First of all, have you finished your question? Yes. Regarding further steps or further action, I've already responded to that situation. At this juncture, I do not want to make any statements on concrete action based upon prejudice, but we have all options on the table, including recognition of statehood. You mentioned sanctions, but we are not excluding any option and will continue to study the matter closely. Further, the United States position. I have no intention to comment on each policy of the United States, but regarding the behaviors taken by Hamas, we have lodged a complaint. We have strongly condemned their behaviors. So we have no thinking whatsoever that these steps would benefit Hamas.
Chiba-san from GG Press. Yes, this is Chiba from GG Press. You mentioned about the phone conference between Israel and the U.S., and you mentioned that you have stated Japan's intention. What was the response from the counterpart? Can you share with us to the extent you can? these are diplomatic dialogue. So I will refrain from commenting the details of what we discussed. But to the U.S., we have expressed Japan's stance, and U.S. has a great influence, the greatest influence to Israel amongst other countries. And so what Israel is conducting at this moment, we cannot tolerate. That is what I expressed, and we asked the U.S. to take leadership in making sure that these actions would be stopped. From the U.S., they also expressed the U.S. stance, and again, I will refrain from sharing the details here. So to the Foreign Minister Sa'al from Israel, I also expressed Japan's stance. And as a friend, I expressed that it is important that Israel, especially looking at the international community's response, it is important that Israel takes actions to suspend its action at this moment. But of course, there was an explanation from Minister Sa'al what Israel's stance is. And also to Palestine, we also expressed Japan's stance at the moment. We expressed that Japan will continuously support two-state solution. And for that, what seems to be effective and practical in terms of diplomatic actions is something that we'd like to continue. And even for Palestine's reform, Japan is willing to continuously offer support. From Palestine, there were words of gratitude for the support Japan has been able to provide thus far. But at any rate, this is a very tough situation which the Palestine side did express.
Freelance, my name is Shiba. You have decided to forego recognition of Palestinian statehood. Now, Japan is on Israel's side. This has become viral. The Commission of Inquiry of the Human Rights Council said Israel has committed genocide in the Gaza Strip. Regardless of what the policy and perspective of Japan is, it's like declaring that Japan admits genocide, and you will not be able to avoid such taint in reputation. So that stain is going to remain in Japanese diplomatic history with your name on it. So how is Japan going to respond to that? And it's genocide. If you aren't thinking sanctions on Israel, even when the United Nations organ says it's genocide, don't you think that's too relaxed as a position of the government? Well, separate from the Japanese government, you said, that's a queer way to put it. I've been trying to explain how the Japanese government considers this issue, what our philosophy is, and we are seeking, and we have consistently sought the two-state solution between Israel and Palestine. Our position as such remains unchanged. You talked about the commission. Now, this is an independent committee that is constructed with 3 experts acting as individuals. And I will not be making any comments on behalf of the government regarding comments by such a committee. But as I said in my initial remarks, the issue is not whether or not statehood is recognized. It's an issue of when we recognize statehood. At the risk of repeating myself, what is to be done in order for us to become as close as possible to the two-state solution? And we need to take realistic diplomatic steps towards that end. And I made such efforts today, and I will put all of my energy into such efforts. So this judgment is not in contradiction to Japan's position to seek peace in the Middle East.
Sasayama-san from Asahi Newspaper. Yes, this is Sasema from Asahi newspaper. I'd like to also ask another question around Palestine. So this decision, people will see Japan as to have followed the U.S. decision. But is there any, can you share with us a little more background so that we'd be convinced that it was a comprehensive decision? Well, since the outset, I have been making quite specifically of that. So I do not think Japan is just following suit of U.S. because we have not received any clear request from the U.S. This is something that Japan, comprehensively with our own intention and will, have made the decision. The reason why we have made this decision is exactly what I've mentioned at the very outset. So I will not repeat again what I've already mentioned. If you have any specific reasons, please do ask again.
上村さん、読売ニュースペーパー。上村 of 読売。Now, my question is on a different subject and presidential election of the LDP. Takeshi-san did a press conference, so in effect, 5 contenders have come out. So at this timing, Minister, who are you going to support amongst those 5 candidates? If you have an idea, please share that idea with us. And in selecting whom you support, what are the points that you will focus on as you select the person you will be supporting? I have not yet decided who to support. You said that it's de facto, all the candidates have come out, but have they all done press conferences? No. Right, they haven't conducted any press conference, so I would like to listen carefully to their views and then make a judgment. At the previous round or the 2 rounds before, I believe I said as follows. I originally took the position that presidential election is unnecessary, but now that decision has been made to conduct the LDP presidential election, we want someone that would take over the challenges put forth by the Ishiba administration and seek progress. And that is doing until the very end the political reform and the tax and tariff reform, inflation, wage increase, and those economic challenges have to be taken over and progress seek. And also, disaster risk reduction and regional economic development are still agenda items that are midway. So leaders that can cater to those needs would be the most appropriate. And also, we have been engaging in politics of deep discussion under a minority government. And after the election, we have faced the reality of minority ruling party. So we want a leader who can continue with this policy of deliberation.
Shiba-san, yes, this is my turn again. Whether or not it is a genocide, are you saying that Japan would not be able to tell if this is a genocide? Is that what you're saying? And also, ICC to President Netanyahu has stated that they would. I think Japan needs to take a stance, a much stronger stance. So we are aware what has been done, what has happened, and how many casualties are happening. But then whether or not this could be determined as a genocide, this is something that we still need to confirm the facts, and we need to reflect that with the international law around human rights, and before we be able to make our final conclusion. And what about the arrest by the arrest order from ICC to Netanyahu? The arrest warrant? So I do not believe what we are facing at this moment is directly related. And so again, at this moment, this is about whether or not this approval of Palestine as a statehood is really going to effectively resolve what we are currently facing. And so that is what we have really looked at in making our decision. And this is something that we have stated strongly to Israel. Now, as I mentioned at the outset, even if all these is happening, if there seems to be further actions from Israel that would be against resolving this issue, if this something actually happens, then inclusive of what you mentioned, which is also about approval of the Palestine statehood and also putting sanctions to the top members of Israel. Of course, it's not that we have anything specific, but we need to put all options on the table.
Kashikawa of Kyoto Press. Now, a different subject. My question is related to the security laws. Today is the 10th anniversary, and there is uniform operations between the Self-Defense Force and the U.S. forces. So what do you think about the 10 years since these legislations passed? And also, under the Trump administration, U.S. is becoming inward-looking, and there are concerns regarding the engagement with allies by the United States. What do you think about the significance of the security legislations? Yes, 10 years have passed since the enactment of the peace and security legislation, defending the territory, sea space, and airspace of Japan, peace and stability of the region, and the lives and properties of the citizens is one of the most important responsibilities of the government. And with the peace and security legislation, the Japan-U.S. alliance has becoming ever more strong, and the deterrence and response capabilities have improved. And it's not just with our only ally, the United States, but our partnership with like-minded nations is even stronger, has become stronger. For example, last month, the British naval carrier Prince of Wales made a port call, and the Self-Defense Force engaged in military asset protection as first ever such endeavor to the United Kingdom forces. So under the peace and security legislation, not only with our ally, but with like-minded countries, partnership has strengthened. So we've been able to widen the breadth of steps taken for security and defense cooperation, and we think that this contributes to the peace and security of Japan and peace and stability of the region. And after the enactment of the securities, we adopted the 3 security-related documents. So Japan's security policy has responded properly and appropriately to the very severe security environment surrounding us. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs have taken these steps. By taking stock of these actions we've taken, we will continue to keep in close contact with the relevant ministries and agencies to defend Japan and seek the peace and security and peace and stability of the region. I used to be the defense ministry, and defense policy and foreign policy are 2 sides of the same coin, 2 sides of the same wheel, 2 wheels of the same car. So what's most important is continuing foreign policy efforts in order to avoid tension precariously rising in the region. So both are necessary to upgrade the deterrence. The passage of the peace and security legislation made a big contribution.
Uemura-san from Yomiuri. This is Uemura from Yomiuri. Can I go back to 2 questions around Palestine's approval of statehood? So France and other countries, not a few, but there are several countries that have already stated that they would be approving Palestine's statehood. Now, how have you, as the foreign minister, been looking at all these development? The countries that have stated that they will approve versus Japan, who is not. how do you mean to keep alliance with the countries that will be making this approval? And I do believe that the Legislators Association have also been able to send a request in this regards. And I think there was also a demo yesterday, and there are many public opinions who will be in favor of this approval. Now, if you are going to be withholding this decision to approve the statehood of Palestine, how do you mean to understand the calls that you're hearing from inside Japan? So countries that we have the relationship, we always do make sure that we keep the communication with the G7 countries. Now, I will refrain from making comments from the decision that other countries have made, but I do not believe that all G7 countries have made a unanimous decision in this sense. But of course, it does not mean we will leave this situation just be on its own. And I think all countries do agree that there needs to be a solution from here. In regards to the approval of statehood, I am sure there are reasons behind each countries in making their own decision. But alliance amongst the G7 countries, or perhaps there could be more alliance with wider community with the friendly diplomatic related countries. And I think this is something that we can keep on doing. I have no concerns in this regards. There has been this bipartisan requirements from over 200 members. And I fully pay respect to their voice. But I think this is very much because this humanitarian situation that we're seeing in Gaza, the Gaza Strip, everyone is very concerned, and I feel the same. But then it's really about how we be able to make a step ahead in resolving this issue. We have thought of this seriously in making this decision. And so I would like to make sure that we be able to explain thoroughly to win understanding. Thank you.